Okay, so we should come up with negative square root 3 over 2. Any questions on how I got negative square root 3 over 2? Now, ladies and gentlemen, notice in 3 and 4, the composition rule applied. Notice when I did the composition of sign with the inverse sign, that did cancel out to give me the negative square root of 2 over 2. The reason why is because this value has to fall within the domain of inverse sign, which is negative 1 to 1, which it does. Same thing with number 4. The composition rule applied because the cosine of the inverse cosine, this value is between negative 1 and 1. That doesn't always work. Take a look at the next example. We have the inverse sine of the sine of 11 pi over 6. This composition rule would not work because, remember, this angle has to fall within the restricted domain. And remember, what is the domain restriction for sine? It went from negative pi over 2 to pi over 2. 11 pi over 6 is not between those two angles. So this is where you just got to work it inside out. So again, sine of 11 pi over 6. It's a unit circle. You're in quadrant what? 4. Sine is negative down there in quadrant 4. So at 11 pi over 6, the sine of 11 pi over 6 is negative 1/2. Just going back to your old unit circle. Now look on the outside. I have the arc sine of negative 1/2. Now you're back to inverses. Remember, you're allowed to be in 1 and 4. So because this is negative, what quadrant are we going to be located? We're going to be in quadrant 4. So the what angle down there in quadrant 4 has that sine value of negative 1/2? Negative what? Negative pi over 6. So that's the case where that composition rule did not apply. You guys go ahead and try the next 3.